I think ownership is taking full responsibility for the results in your life.
This is the Own It Show, where we tell stories of how everyday people made ownership theirs.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Own It Show. I'm Justin.
And I'm Alyse. Welcome to the show.
And guys, I'm going to go back on what we talked about before, and it has been a lineup after a lineup after a lineup, bringing nothing but value to you guys. And I'm just so excited with a lot of the feedback that we've been getting and the emails that we've been getting and the questions that we've been getting. And as I reached out, again, this goes back to the Wellspring community. I know we've talked about it on here before, but I met two people while I was there, and it was really unique because at first I had no idea that they worked together, but even two, that they were married. And in fact, the equivalency of their marriage and their working relationship is that at 10 years. And so my initial inkling was completely off, but also the work that they're doing is incredible. And the way in which they're serving is not only honorable, but also serving in a deep, deep mission-driven way. And it's amazing to see the changes in people that they are creating in a high way, but the way in which they live their life also enables that as well. And so immediately I knew I had to bring them on and expose them to you guys, because the lessons that we can learn and the inspirational, but also aspirational story that they're able to connect to with is going to be something that you can not only just be motivated by, but also spring you into action for. And so without further ado, Nick and Amanda, it's so great to have you guys. And I know that you guys just launched Kingdom Brotherhood, formerly known as $1 Billion Brotherhood. So congratulations on that. And it is so great to have you on the show.
Yeah, I appreciate all you guys. I really just following you guys on social has been so cool. And I want to thank you for this. Like at one point I was 60 pounds heavier than now, which maybe we could share a photo. It looks absolutely hilarious. And ultimately, I didn't know that there was a podcast, a YouTube channel, time that really didn't exist to change my situation. So I was completely powerless to change it. And I know that what you guys have done with relationships, it took someone like actually pulling me aside, sharing with me a path out of my situation that gave me the breakthrough. I lost 60 pounds in 6 months because of one conversation with someone. And I implement that in what you're doing. And it's like, for people listening to this podcast, there could be something on this show that we talk about. It's that one thing that shifts the next 6 months of your life, but also what you guys are doing. The last retreat that you guys did in Mexico, top notch looking. If people haven't seen it, it looks amazing. And he's not paying me any money to tell you guys that either. I personally followed it, have seen the powerful life that they live. And also for the people that stay at the very end of this show, there's an opportunity that just one small thing could shift your life forever, but you've created the place for people to receive that info that I didn't have. And if I didn't get that information, I would have never transformed. So thank you for creating a space of transformation for people.
Well, thank you for saying that, because I think anybody who leaves a mission-driven life, a purpose-driven life, is all about creating those environments, all about creating those spaces for transformation to happen. It's literally when preparation meets opportunity, transformation can happen. And without that, without one of those ingredients, we're always kind of navigating our own path that never really gets us to where we're really wanting to go. So Nick and Amanda, I'd love you could kind of just talk back to like that story. I know when we were sitting around the table at Cloud Camp in Colorado Springs, what really jumped out at me was the way that you guys met, and the two people that you were that day is not even close to the two people that are sitting across from Alyse and I today. And I know your perspectives and your stories are a little bit different in terms of how the story comes to be. But I'd love you guys to work together to tell that story, because it will resonate so deeply with people. Not only that growth and transformation can happen, but what happens when you lean into that? What happens when you step out into discomfort and have a wake-up call? And the wake-up call doesn't have to come at 55, 65, 75 years old, but can come all of a sudden at 25.
Yeah. So I think when the story that you're referring to is like the story of like our lowest point. And so how we met was we actually met at a youth like conference of 30,000 people, and he sat behind me. And we actually didn't really connect at that event. He sat behind me, he actually took a picture, and he hit me with like a piece of paper.
On accident. I flicked a paper football and it hit her on the back of the head. And she looked back at me and I acted like I didn't do it. And then I cracked up laughing. That was the only point of contact that we had at that event.
So then like a month later, we both got accepted to the same ministry school and we got put in a Facebook group. And I posted a picture of a Ferrari jet. And I was like, I can't wait to like travel the world, like serving God, doing missions in my Ferrari jet. And
keep in mind, like she's 17 at this point, and I'm dreaming big as well. So when you're talking about like being yourself and putting yourself out there and even being growth minded, this was both of us. We were growing. We were growing ourselves. We were growing our faith. That was our alignment.
Yeah.
And we met each other and like hit each other on the path of growth. I wasn't looking for a girlfriend.
Yeah.
She wasn't necessarily looking for a husband. I really never thought I would get married ever. I never thought I'd get married. I thought I'd die by 30, just living life like full out. And I was going to like somehow just die in my path.
Martyr.
And, like, I was like, I'm going to be a martyr or something. I'm doing something crazy. I'm going big. And really like, that was the first connection point where even when we look at business as well, it's like you put out content, you say things and you attract people, but based on your packaging, based on where you sell your goods. Like if you're at Whole Foods, you're going to attract a different type of person than if it's like Walmart, right? It's just different. And so for her, like to post that just attracted me automatically. I was like, wow, like why would she dream that big? Especially when you get hate in a post like that. Anyone can believe that if someone's going to go serve the poor and they're flying in a Ferrari jet to get there, well, why didn't you sell the Ferrari jet and like pay for all the people, right? So I messaged her because of the negative feedback I knew she'd get. And I was just like, I think it's so cool that you would even dream that big. Now think about that for 1 second, how powerful that really is that if she were have thought how people would have responded to that post, I would have never connected with her. And then I would have never sent her that message. And it wouldn't have shown me that light, that like part of her. And so if she just didn't post that, we probably would have never connected. And I wouldn't have been able to say, okay, something about her is something that I see in me as well. I said, I want to be friends. I was like, I just think that's cool. I want to encourage you. Let's be friends. I didn't think anything else of it. I promise I wasn't trying to like sneaky her and like
sneak into the DMs.
Yeah, I wasn't sneaking into the DMs that much at least.
And then you married me and now I post way crazier stuff.
And she just continues to dream big.
I'm that person that like Facebook likes to censor, be like, fact check. And I'm like, no.
So ultimately, like that's where we connected. We went to ministry school together for that year. We got married after that. And quickly after, we're like, what do we do? I had never had a job. I barely graduated from high school. My dad ran a business. My uncle ran a business, but I had no real credentials. And it wasn't until someone literally shipped us a bag of half-eaten shake mix, like protein powder. They were like, oh my gosh, you could sell this protein powder and make money. And that was our first introduction into business, which was network marketing. And at the time, we were like, what are we supposed to do? We're newly married. We have no money. We want to spend time together and not work away from each other. So we're like, where could we get a job that we could work at the same exact time right next to each other? That doesn't really exist. So we really only got into business together because it was like, well, if I'm going to start a business, if two of us work on it at the same time, there's probably a better chance of us actually making money and succeeding. That was literally it. So there's other people out there that are like, should I work with my spouse? How do you guys do it? Oh, we didn't really have an option. Like we didn't really think about that 10 years ago. We're just like, how can we be successful? And that's where we initially got our start in. And it didn't go that well for sure.
Yeah. So we did well for, go ahead.
No, please.
I was saying, so we did really well for a while. And then
I thought I was retired.
Burned.
A year into the business, we were making money, working part-time, and people would be like, what do you do? And I was like, oh, I'm retired on residual income.
Yeah.
And like the entire company tanked after doing $680 million in 1 year. And I watched everything like fall between the cracks. And I had to go to my wife and tell her that we're getting kicked out of our townhome. We just moved to San Diego, living it up, like going after our dreams, thinking we're amazing, to like literally my paycheck getting cut to $700 a month. Like that was how much I was making all of a sudden from the network marketing business. Everything imploded, partially my fault because I didn't know what to do in the face of opposition. All I'd done is got in, sold a bunch of stuff. As soon as opposition hit, I was not prepared for it at all. We got kicked out of our townhome. I had to try to go to a halfway house for kids like that were in troubled homes and try to rent a room in the back of a halfway house for $600 a month. And the state denied me. I remember we're at a business event and my wife is like, just rah, right? Like feeling the vibes, like we're going to kill it. And I get this email back. Hey, you've been denied. The state denies you to live in this place. You need to find a different place to live. And I'm like, I have to tell my wife that leaving this event, we're homeless. She's all excited. She's like pumped up. We're going to kill it in business. And I really had to humble myself. And for 2.5 years after that, I cleaned carpets for my main source of income and transparently made $19,000 the first year and $21,000 the year after that. And she made $900 a month working at a massage department as we invested every single dollar that we earned into living in a 400 square foot apartment and building an online business on the side and paying educators and coaches and everything we could to be able to grow. And it was absolutely like terrible. And this was like very, very dark place in our relationship because it was all exciting at the beginning. We had vision, but we got smacked in the face. Mm-hmm. And I truly believe that there's a guy named Joseph that he had vision in his life too. And he was like, basically told his whole family members, like, I'm going to rule above you. Like, you guys are going to follow what I say. And all of them hated it. And they literally tried to kill him. They sold him into slavery. And he had this vision and then he's in slavery. And then in slavery, he then got thrown into jail. And then jail, he's stuck in jail. And I look a lot at my life and I'm like, wow, I had a big vision. And then I feel like I got thrown into slavery with the job and jail with the failures and like the debt and all these things. So that was super difficult. And that was probably the rock bottom of our journey inside of our relationship so far.
Mm-hmm. You talked a lot. Well, first off, thank you for sharing that story because it's not easy. And we all go through these phases of life that when we're in it, feels like you're in a pressure cooker. It feels like you can't win and there's no way out. And it feels like, why is this happening to me? But ultimately, we know that God puts these things on our path because it's meant to stretch us. It's meant to grow us. It's meant to, at the end of the day, catapult us. So Amanda, I'm super curious, Nick walked us through his version of it, but I'm super curious to hear from you. How did you go from this really, really low moment in your life and being from a high, as he said, you're super rah-rah, going from this high to this crazy, crazy low, and then ultimately back onto the trajectory that you're on right now. How did you fare through it all? What was your mindset towards it all?
I think I just was like, I got to figure it out. I just got to do the work and I got to fix the problem. I think that's where my mind went. And so what I did was I learned about how to do online health coaching. And that was my first thing is I interned under a girl. I was like, well, I'm passionate about health. I've been like selling health for, 3 years, but not my own business. So how can I do this? And so I interned underneath her. I learned all about internet marketing and how to run an online health coaching company. And so she was doing like, I don't know, probably $10,000, $20,000 a month, just like as like a young girl. And I was like, wow, if I could just make like $5,000 a month, that would be amazing, And so that's kind of where I got my start. And yeah, I think I just was just like so head down that I knew where I was going and I knew we were going to be successful. And like, I remember when we were in the network marketing company, it was always about like arrive by 25, like become a millionaire by the time you're 25 years old. And Nicholas told his stepmom at the time, like, yeah, we're going to be a millionaire by the time we turn 25. And she's like, oh yeah, right. Like there's no way that can happen. And like laughed at us. And I was just like, no, like it's going to happen. And I think we did make $1 million by the time I was 25.
You were 24, I was 26.
Yeah. And so I was like, come on, like, we did it.
So I was like, split the difference, like I was off by a little bit. Okay. Like, let's not get too much in the specifics there. But I remember being like, dang it, like I was 26.
Yeah.
Wow, that's annoying.
But like, I think just like continue, like if you're in a low place right now, continually like think about the person you're going to be in 10 years and don't act like don't let the circumstances you're in right now dictate who you are. Like I never had like a poverty, like I can't do this, like a victim type of mindset. Like I was always like, I'm successful. I'm going to figure this out. Like I'm not going to compromise and like treat myself less than I know what I'm worth, even though my circumstances suck right now. And my bank account sucks. Like I'm not going to act like that. And so I think a lot of people they probably didn't even know we were struggling because we never acted like it, never said anything because we were always healthy. We were still happy. We were still like praising God. Like it's just our bank account was different,
Yeah. Yeah. And like, I just to like throw it down there to give some perspective and why I work with men in general is because throughout all that, she's right. Like we were happy in our marriage and we had a $37.50 budget for food every week each. So $75 total for a food budget. We had a $25 a week eating out budget. So $12.50 split. So we either got 2 pints of ice cream or we went to this pizza place during happy hour between 10 and 11 p.m. And we went there every single week and we got water and pizza, water and pizza, water and pizza, water and pizza for like years.
And it was the best pizza in the world.
Oh yeah. And like even those date nights were still like amazing. They were best date nights. And it's like, I was thinking about like, even before that, like I was wandering stores before we got married, hoping that someone would ask to buy me food because I literally had no money. So I was so like, I couldn't afford any food. And I used to walk grocery stores like, well, if there's any chance someone will ask, I'll never ask for money, but like I'm hungry and I have no food. I'm just going to walk the grocery store until someone like maybe offers to buy me something. And like, that's the mindset that I was in before this. And like, last night we got to dinner and it was like $650. It was with a couple of friends, but we were able to purchase their food for them. And I'm like looking back going like, this is amazing. But even more is like, we were happy when we were buying a $25 dinner and we were thinking of the vision we could create. But as a man, it was so difficult because my identity was in the work that I was creating. So imagine going from like success, big dreams, just like Joseph. Like if I knew about Joseph's story, it would have been different. But like for me, I was all of a sudden, I start working for my dad in his carpet cleaning business. I'm making 19, 21 grand a year. I'm working full time. I'm cleaning a lot of the carpets to try to make the business go afloat. My dad gets into a terrible motorcycle accident where he's out of the business and out of the office for 14 months. I'm trying to juggle all these things. And then I'm supposed to I get invited to Lewis Howe's book launch. And I'm like, I'm a carpet cleaner. Like I took that on as an identity, which where Amanda was like, you can't take on your current circumstance and allow it to define your current internal reality and identity. You want your identity and internal reality to shape your external reality. And for me, I was allowing my internal identity to shape the world around me, which kept me as a carpet cleaner. And I couldn't get out of that mode because I was so afraid. I was parking a mile down the road, changing my clothes, spraying myself with cologne, and entering into that place like, I can't let them know who I am, thinking that the activity that I was stuck doing was the identity of me. When really at the end of the day, the identity of me was my potential. Like now it's like, we speak in front of 5,000 people, like we hold these big events, we do all these things. And it's like, well, technically now am I different? No, I'm the same person I was back then, but I was just at that time allowing my situation, my lack of income, lack of skill set, lack of results. Just like I got so low that I remember going to an event, which is very interesting because it was actually Nick Unsworth's event that we're both connected with. And it was $30 for parking. Yeah. And I was so stingy and so hurt by the amount of failure I had that I dropped my wife off at the event. And I said, they're not going to get me. I'm going to go park on the side of the road for 4 hours. Maybe even go hit a bucket of golf balls that's $15, save myself 15, and pick my wife up later from this event. I didn't think that the people, the information, the network was worth the investment. And that's how jacked up my thinking was. And it was like, it finally got to the point where I'm dumping my carpet cleaning van. I'm sitting there outside this tiny little place that's behind someone else's home. And I'm like, where am I going? I'm literally ending up just like my dad, like just like my father. I'm doing the same exact thing, same exact routine. It scared me. And I was like saving, being all like minute about my budget, like trying to hold on to $30 and like deny myself from breakthrough, which is like probably what you go through with your events. You're like, your breakthrough's on the other side of this event. And they're like thinking about money. And like, but the problem is I projected out, if I kept doing what I was doing in my life, what would it be like? And ultimately that's not who my wife married. So I would have split with my wife because I wasn't even showing up like the man she married with vision and purpose. I was never going to get to where I wanted to be financially. I'd never hit any of my goals that I had of influence. I'd never hit all those God-given dreams that I had when we originally went into business. I left there. I wrote down on a piece of paper, if it's meant to be, it's up to me. What can I do daily to co-labor and partner with the vision that God's given me and do things every single day to make that happen? I listened to Think and Grow Rich 3 times or 4 times that year. And I was like, I need to focus on something that's going to help me build this business. And we invested. We literally took every single dollar that we had. And because of her, she pushed me to invest in our very first mastermind and get help. And man, like I didn't show up to anything because I was a carpet cleaner until the one event. And I showed up there and man, like breakthrough happened. We hit our revenue goal that year, which was 100K. So I went from 21K to 100K. The next year I was so scared and we pumped up to like 500K that next year. And it was like, oh my gosh. Like if I didn't make that decision to allow, like the biggest thing that helped me in all of that was that I really asked God and I had a vision for who am I becoming? Like if everything went well over these next 20 years, who would I be? And I started picturing that and I was like, that guy's badass. Like he knows what he's all about. He's not afraid of money. He walks in abundance mentality. He doesn't care if people say no. He knows that the things he says is valuable. And I was like, most people would say, have that person mentor you, like get advice from them. And I was like, you know what? What if I just changed places with that guy? And I was just like, if you came back in time and you were in my situation, how would you build this thing? And all of a sudden I'd practice. I would get mentorship. Like I've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars to be able to learn and grow. Yet when I showed up on the podcast, got on stage, got on a sales call, I was like, God, I'm switching places with that guy. That guy knows what he's talking about. I'm going to speak this with conviction and then I'm going to learn afterwards and I'm going to grow and I'm going to develop. And all of a sudden, like I no longer had the identity of a carpet cleaner. I was allowing my internal identity to shape my external reality. Whereas before it was the exact opposite. External reality was saying you're a broke carpet cleaner, can't provide for your wife. You're in a 400 square foot apartment with no air conditioning. It's 110 degrees outside and you're trying to interview successful people. And I felt like I could never be a successful person because of my reality. And I just decided I am going to be a successful person. I'm going to build this thing. And really that was like the biggest shift that I had to go through as a man was that I just allowing my external world to shape my reality. So don't allow yourself to do that. Internal reality, shaping your external world.
Man, there's so much that like I've written down that I want to dive into. It's so much that I want to respond to. But the uniqueness of is like, if we were to zoom out all of a sudden, and for you listeners out there, kind of coming back to what Amanda and Nick have going on with Kingdom Brotherhood and this vision that was ultimately casted, this inner discontent that was put on their hearts to continue to lean into this space. When you follow a godly path, it's going to stir up trouble. It is going to stir up trouble because at the end of the day, let's dive into this. Satan's purpose is he doesn't care about us. He doesn't care about people. He cares about disrupting God's vision and what God's doing because he's not a creator. He's a destroyer. And at the end of the day, we have to be able to say, hey, when it's hard, don't stop now because you didn't realize that you were this important to the devil. That's it. You just didn't realize that. And when we can lean into that, and it gets really hard, you just know you have something really important inside. You have some vision that you haven't casted yet. You have some mission that you haven't leaned into yet. You have some calling that you haven't answered yet. And it's just about picking up the phone. It's just about sitting down and saying, hey, what does this look like for me so that I can continue to lean into this and I can continue to create in a really powerful way and make this calling, make this vision, make this purpose that's on my life a reality. Because you two are just living and breathing examples of that, and something that for everybody else becomes inspirational and aspirational. And if you can create vision on something, it's not just possible, it's probable. But it takes you taking steps forward. It takes you leaning into that. And I want to go to like one of my good friends, Todd Herman. He talks about this all the time, which is what you just mentioned, which is that alter ego, that side of being able to switch places with somebody else, lean into something else, and be able to then really purposely and tangibly show up and deliver for a purpose who you are wanting to become, who you are wanting to be. And that's a powerful, powerful place to take action from.
And even think about it, like I look at disciples, right, that followed Jesus, they were pretty dumb. Like, to be honest, they were like, they didn't even get anything he was saying. I'm like, I like, don't know if I have to apologize for saying that to them. But ultimately, it's like, they didn't know what he was saying. Like, if you go read anything, it's like, I'm going to die and rise on the third day. And they're like, what, why would you do that? Or like, you'd think they were so dumb that when he did die, get killed, they didn't even go check. It was only the women that went and checked. I almost said chicks, like only the chicks went and checked because they were like the ones you believed. It's like, what happened between then and when they caught this vision and new identity? Right? It's like, better I said in the Holy Spirit. And they had this like experience that all of a sudden they like started growing the church by thousands daily. They knew the answers of how to build everything, what people to put in place. And I was like, there's a shift there that like, I was really dumb. And something happened there where they caught vision. I had to explore that for myself, but like something happened where all of a sudden they went from dumb to like very smart. They knew the answers. They knew the direction. They had the confidence in what they were speaking. And people were just like, boom, boom, boom. They were believing it. They were getting on board. That those idiots, no offense to them, but I think they would say the same thing. Like there's like 3 billion Christians on the planet, right? And it's like spawned from these guys. I'm like, wow, like that's really cool. If I think like, wow, that was really not, they didn't even catch wind of this. What's that side for me? What have I been called to do? Like for them, they were called to bring that message to the world. And for me, it's like, I'm called in this business world. I'm called to build a great family. I'm called to be a great leader. I'm called to lead myself first, lead my family, and lead my vision. It's like, how can I show up really, really great inside of that and have that type of encounter as well? And really for me, like, I think that the biggest thing that I had to learn was like obedience to the vision that God had put in my heart. Like I looked at like this guy named Abraham, look back, like, homie's crazy, dude. Like, I don't even know if I could see this. Like, he gets told to sacrifice his own son. And he loved his son dearly, but decided that he was like, it wasn't even a question that he was going to be faithful to God. And God didn't make him do that. Like, if you read the whole story, like, God intervened. But this guy was so willing. And I looked at the vision in my life. It's like, I feel like I have these God kind of placed dreams on my heart, but it's so scary to sacrifice or do or step out into this identity that I need to become. Right? It's like, who do I need to become to carry out this mission? I'm like, God, the visions are so great that you've given me that I'm the only one that can screw them up. But like, as soon as I started going, if you built this vision, you've also built something inside of me to carry this out. And that's when I read his story, I was like, wow, he's willing to sacrifice his son to be obedient. And like, I'm not willing to sacrifice my ego or like believing God over my circumstance, like that I was a carpet cleaner. It's like, God, I know you called this to me, but like, I'm a carpet cleaner and I was allowing my circumstance to define me rather than God. And it's like, man, I've had a jacked up path throughout the entire thing. But I truly believe that it's through people like you getting in experiences. Like I ultimately got transformed by getting in great community. I know that's what you guys have created inside of your retreats is couples that are looking, that they're decided that they want to grow. They want to grow with really, really great people. They know that growth isn't just a one moment occasion, or else I would have been successful for my first woohoo aha moment. It's about running together inside that. And you guys have created that. And I truly believe that inside of a relationship, it's the most powerful. It's not addition in relationship. 1 + 1 = 2. It's 1 + 1 = 11. It's like multiplication factor of success. And I believe that I truly wouldn't be anywhere near as successful without my wife. Yet it also can be like the biggest detriment as well if it's done incorrectly. And most people can probably relate to that more than the multiplication side, right? The people that have invested in programs like yours and ran with couples like yours have, they're probably experiencing the multiplication. most people are experiencing this like, man, you wouldn't know, like, don't get married, don't have kids, don't have more kids. That's what we hear out there from the average people that don't listen to shows like this. When true relationship done correctly with the right tools, the right people, the right community, the right commitment is an absolute multiplication factor on all of your success.
You're absolutely right. And this is actually a great transition into the next thing I really want to focus on. We can just spend a couple minutes here. We've talked a lot about your individual experiences throughout this journey that we call life. I want to talk about, take a couple minutes to really dive into how this has impacted your relationship and how you've been able to show up differently for one another throughout this entire thing, and how has your relationship changed?
Good question.
I think, I mean, a lot of things change the relationship, I think, as you get older, but then also having kids changes things. Because, you know, before we had our son, it was just us, you know, like we were out there crushing it and going after everything and going to all the events together. And then, you know, then like once you have a kid, you're just like, okay, like what does life look like now? And so I think now, like, number one, as like a married couple and like running a business, having help is 100% essential. I recommend everyone get help. You know, it really does take a village to raise a family. And so I think a lot of it, like the relationship stuff, like just getting past, like one of the things that we've had over the last 2 years is we've almost like held each other back in the business because of like, oh, like, I don't want to put more stress on him. Or he's like, I don't want to put more stress on Amanda because she's got so much going on and being a mom and all of these things. And then once we finally were like, we're not going to hold each other back anymore. Like, we're just going to be completely honest and like almost separate, like, hey, this is like, you know, like we're married, but at the same time, like this is business and we're working together. And so like, this is just the tasks that have to get done, and not worry so much about like hurting each other's feelings or like how this is coming off. It's just like if I was working with anyone else, like this is the stuff that I would say, like, you know what I mean? And so I think that's what we really,
and vice versa.
Yeah. So I think we really
bring the heat.
Yeah. And so that's one thing that has really like helped us in our business working relationship now that we have a family and everything. It's just, It's not just us, and we don't just work 24/7 anymore. Like, we don't do that anymore. We like to have family time. We like to have rest time. And so I think a lot of it's just like just getting better at communication at every stage of your relationship.
Yeah. And for us, like the definition to us as a power couple, and I don't really know a lot of other people's, but when I really put it all together for our guys, it was like two people with two different visions coming together in one like-minded vision, and then using their skills, talents, and abilities to get to that family vision together. Mm-hmm. And that dynamic changes, especially when you get married at 20 and 18. And then you grow from 20 and 18 to 30 and 28 now. So 10 years, like a third of our life. The male brain isn't even fully developed. Like, I think like there's like multiple areas of the male brain that aren't even developed till you're 30. And some not till 25, and definitely not a lot when you're 20. And so throughout that process, like she's had to see that inside of me, right? I didn't establish myself. I don't believe in the become successful and then find your spouse. I don't believe in any of that crap. Like, we went from rock bottom multiple times and built up. So we're not afraid of rock bottom at all. And we learned all those building blocks on the way together, and we saw the pros and cons, and we were able to be happy even in the hard things. And I would say some of the big things for us were around building that vision and constantly building that together and refreshing it every year, every quarter, talking every month, meeting weekly, talking daily, debriefing at the end of the day, and then talking about what we're doing that next day, and using our skills, talents, and abilities. So some people out there, you won't work in a business together. Like, we have this immense amount of pressure and also immense amount of like longevity of, you add up the amount of hours that we've spent together, and it's like a 50, 60 year relationship. If you were to add up how often people hang out with their spouse outside of all their work. Mm-hmm. So we had this like massive cramming of like a 60-year relationship in a very short amount of time. Mm-hmm. And this massive growth and changing and kids and factors and success and failure. And it was this constant ability to align with each other and say, here's our vision as a family. We have 2 visions that are separate. We're going to build that into one. What can we do every single day to serve this vision together? And it has nothing to do with just work. Like, work has a vision and that's amazing, but your family as a couple and then as a family has a vision. We're submitting it all together to create one like-minded vision. And then together, husband, wife are using their skills, talents, and abilities to support that vision, which makes everyone valuable because every single person is contributing to that. And when you have that as the main factor, you look inside business and you have a vision in the business, you have a critical number in the business that is the most important number in your business, and everything has to go towards moving that. And if it doesn't go towards moving that, then it's not a very high priority task. And when I look at that as a family and as a unit, I want to make sure everything is building to that. And that a lot of times builds vision when one person's not lacking, when one person's lacking. A lot of our guys will be like, how do I get my wife on board? How do I get her to feel part of this? I'm like, well, one, she is, because it's not about your business vision. It's about your family vision. Mm-hmm. Number 2 is get her to dream and get him to dream. Like, there was times where I wasn't dreaming and I'd be like, honey, like, what do you want out of life? Where do we want to go? If it wasn't about time or money, like, what would you want to experience? And John Madsen, a mutual connection of ours, he said, write down 100 things that you want and 100 things you want to experience, which is like, I'm doing it right now. Super difficult, absolutely terribly difficult. But oftentimes we limit that because we think about the work, the money, the time, and all these things. But if you can dream and start dreaming again as a couple, you can really start figuring out how the work, how the vision, how the sacrifice, how all these things can help bring about those visions, and it becomes far more fun. It's not about goals and success and all these things. And it becomes about, here's our vision as a family, things that we want to accomplish, how we want to live as a family. And now we know we're just doing the things that are required to make that vision reality. And that may be impact, that may be giving away. There's so many different factors to it. So us consistently doing that has been absolutely huge. Figuring out our roles in the relationship. We were opposite. I was the behind the scenes person trying to do the tech stuff. She was in front of the people person trying to sell. And for 3.5 years, we never grossed more than $3,000 a month. We sucked at everything. So that's why we didn't know where we had a capacity to become great.
Yeah.
Oftentimes you attract your exact opposite. So when all of a sudden we figured out, well, what if I was the face and I started selling? And you tried the tech stuff. She had this massive capacity to grow in operations. And I had a massive ability to grow as the front of the company and pushing the vision forward. But we sucked at everything. So we didn't know. And as we did that, all of a sudden we started skyrocketing. So we got literally for years, we were doing the exact opposite wrong thing of how we could contribute to the vision in the family. It's like, oh my gosh, like if we could have figured out our roles, figured out what we wanted as a family, continually stayed on the heartbeat of that, showed that everything that we were doing together as a couple were to contribute to that main vision, consistently check in on it. Like, again, every single day we do our quick meeting, like, here's what I'm doing today. Here's what you're doing today. Do we understand why we're doing this and what we're building towards as a family? And I believe that that's like, at least gives you a shot to not, what do couples say? Oh, just over time, it's just like they became a different person. Why? Because they never checked in. They grew apart. They were 2 separate people with 2 separate visions doing whatever the heck they wanted.
Yeah.
And then coming together at the end of the day, it's like, man, like that's why you wake up one day and you're like, you're not even the same person I married.
Yeah.
1, they're not supposed to be, but 2, there was never a constant connection that happened. I'm sure you guys have great frameworks for this.
Oh,
these are things that we've like jacked up in our relationship. And the newest one was what Amanda said, enabling each other because we have a kid and all these other things is like, I didn't want to do things that put pressure on her. So I would just be like trying to not put pressure on her. And I was basically trying to like, I was thinking about her the whole time. She was thinking about me the whole time. She's like, oh, don't bring this up and don't do this because that'll put pressure on Nicholas. Like, oh, don't bring this up and don't do this and we ended up just enabling each other in the success and growth of our family. And it took a mentor to call us out and a friend to call us out and say, you're enabling each other. You need to cut this off. And we saw it and we were able to throw that to the side. And we've seen exponential growth inside of our relationship and family since that moment.
I love it. And that's why with everything, even within the couples collective that we talk about, is so often there's one person in the relationship that's really focused on growth. There's one person in the relationship that's really focused on pouring into themselves, really focused on creating these leveling up opportunities. And what ends up happening is people go to these events or they go to these transformational experiences and they take 7 steps forward, but their other spouse is back here at ground zero where they were before. And that spouse may be able to come up 1 or 2 levels, but they're not coming up to 7. And so that person from 7 has to come back down to 3. And instead of making these exponential growth steps, they're just iteratively stepping forward a little bit. And this person that went to that is resentful because this other person wasn't able to get to their level. This person's resentful because they're jealous that they can't get to that level. And all of a sudden it turns into this spiral downwards effect of, oh, personal growth is poor and it's causing this rift in our relationship, instead of, no, what has to happen is you have to grow together. You either grow apart or you grow together. It's your choice and it's one decision to make.
And between her and I, like, we made a point, like, she doesn't talk about anything negative about me in front of anyone. Never has. Not because we made it a point. This is the identity that we live by. Me, same exact thing. We're always looking at the potential that each other has, and we're not allowing ourselves to stay lower than that. So there's times where I'm operating below my potential and she keeps me accountable and she calls me out. She pushes me forward and makes sure that I get into communities and groups and people that can make sure she's not the only one sustaining that in my life as well. Because that's a recipe for disaster.
The Wellspring's been amazing.
Wellspring, 45K mastermind, right? It's like, that was a very simple decision and very, very smart. On the opposite side as well, there's a level of state that we require as a watermark in our family, and it's a non-negotiable. And we do not allow each other to operate below this watermark. It's just what we've patented. It's like, if we start getting negative, we chop that off. That's not our identity in our family. That's not the way that we talk. We don't allow us to go down this road, right? So it's like, I think that keeping each other in this realm of growth, but she's not calling me out and like, we'll be bitching and complaining and like all these things that people say. That's not what it's about. She sees greatness and she's always called out the greatness in me. And when you have the closest person to you that knows all of your pitfalls, all of your problems, every shortcoming, how you put your socks on and where you put your socks after you take them off, when they know everything about you and they see that and they believe in you and see greater potential in you, that is the most valuable thing that a man can have, is a woman who sees greater potential in him than anyone around him sees. Because if that person closest to you is talking down to you, then automatically they know more about you. Everyone else sees perception. They know Nicholas as this guy on stage and whatever. Their opinion is not anywhere near as powerful as the closest person to me, because she sees my weaknesses. And when she calls out my greatness, it's like 10 million people telling me that I'm amazing. And I truly believe that both of that, I'm like, she's amazing. She's the strongest person that I've ever seen. I've said that and I've seen that in her life over and over again. And I don't sit there and keep her in account for her disabilities, which is what most people do. Accountability. You did this wrong. That's called accounted disability. Like, you're calling out people's disabilities. That's stupid. Like, keep your wife and keep your husband accountable to their abilities. Account abilities. I'm going to keep you in account for your ability to do more.
You guys are simple. You're bringing so much gold to our listeners today. It's been amazing. So, rapid fire question here.
Yes.
For 2 people who live so strongly in what we call ownership, right? You're connected to one another. You're connected to yourselves. You're connected to God. You're strong in your vision and you see that, and you live in an abundance mindset and not a scarcity mindset. What would you say in a word or a phrase is your definition of ownership?
I think ownership is taking full responsibility for the results in your life.
It's really good. I told you my wife's amazing.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the question is, out of everything, what is the definition of ownership? And as Amanda said, like, I believe it goes right there with commitment. And I believe commitment is doing what you said you would do long after the feeling you said it in is past. So ownership is not a feeling.
Yeah.
It's not a emotional experience. It's making a decision, which means cutting off all other possibilities and saying, like I said, when I first started building a company, if it's meant to be, it's up to me. Like saying, this is mine. No one else is going to change it. No one else is going to influence it. And if anything's going to happen, it's going to be because of your hand on it. And I believe that is what taking ownership is to me.
I love it. Where can people find more about the Kingdom Brotherhood and what you and Amanda have going on?
Bro, I just want to make sure that I don't get in too many comments of people saying this guy talks over his wife too much. So I'm always trying to let her talk first.
So it's the King's Brotherhood.
Yeah,
We're
Kings,
switching everything over right now. But the best place to really get connected is just to us on Instagram at Nicholas Bayerle, at Amanda Bayerle. That's where we have all of the links for everything. And we can, if you have any questions, you can DM us. And
yeah, with tons of free stuff. And if someone came from this show and they DM me on Instagram, I'm happy. I wrote a best-selling book called Modern Day Businessman: Success Without Sacrifice. I'm happy to pay for the physical book, pay for shipping, not take anyone's card, and just send me your address, and I'll literally ship a book out to you for free, all on my own expense. A lot of people do free plus shipping and all this stuff. When I go on someone and I want to invest in what they're doing, like I'm happy to pay for everything to be able to serve your guys' vision and honor the people that you have in your community. Be happy to do that. And I'll take none of your info. You won't even be put into a CRM, like nothing like that, unless you beg for it, which is totally cool as well. But ultimately, like, would love to send that out to people and serve your community.
Amazing. So listeners, as you go forward, take Nick and Amanda up on this. Reach out, go follow him on Instagram, follow them on the social platforms, go listen to his podcast, dive into what's going on there, reach out, ask him for his book. It's all about getting into and around a higher thinking mindset, getting around people who are thinking bigger, getting around people who are dreaming bigger, have a bigger vision, have a bigger purpose, have a bigger calling on their life. Because guess what? You have the same thing in you, and you just have to have it awoken. You just have to have it poured into you. You just have to have it spoken into you. And when that spark goes, it sets up something so that you're able to be blessed, and ultimately you can then bless others. Because being resourceful is one of the biggest things that we can do. It is not what you have right now. It is what are we going to? What are we striving for? What are we ultimately leaning up to, so that we can invest in our own growth, so that then you can invest in others down the way, because we know success is different. So own your different, and we'll see you next week.